The bullet shattered the window 3 feet from Elena Vasquez's head. Glass exploded inward, 1,000 crystalline fragments catching the afternoon light as they rained down on the worn carpet of the children's section. Elena's body reacted before her mind caught up, dropping to her knees behind the circulation desk, heart hammering against her ribs so hard she thought it might crack through bone. The book she'd been reshelving, some picture book about a brave little mouse, tumbled from her fingers and landed spine up on the floor, pages splayed like broken wings. Another crack split the air. Not a bullet this time, just a car backfiring in the parking lot. Elena pressed her palm against her chest, willing her pulse to slow, and laughed, a short, bitter sound that tasted like shame. 28 years old and jumping at car exhaust like a scared rabbit. She pushed herself up, brushing dust from her thrift store cardigan, the navy blue one with the pulled threads at the cuffs that she'd worn so many times the fabric had gone soft and thin. Her fingers trembled as she bent to retrieve the book. That's when she heard it. The crying. Not the usual children's section crying. The frustrated wails of toddlers denied candy or the dramatic sobs of kids whose parents said it was time to leave. This was different, quieter, the kind of crying that came from someone who'd learned that making noise didn't bring help, only more pain. The sound scraped against something raw inside Elena's chest in that hollow place her brother's death had carved out 6 years ago. She found the girl in the back corner, wedged between the picture book shelves and the wall, surrounded by a fortress of books she'd pulled from the lower shelves. Maybe 8 years old, dark curls falling across her face, school uniform rumpled and stained. The child's small hands clutched a copy of The Very Hungry Caterpillar, holding it upside down, tears streaming down her flushed cheeks as she stared at the pages with an expression Elena recognized all too well. Defeat. Shame. The particular agony of being trapped inside your own mind. Where are you watching from? Elena's knees cracked as she lowered herself to the carpet, keeping her distance, making herself small and unthreatening. She'd learned this approach in her graduate program, back when she still believed a master's degree in literacy education would lead to something more than a $32,000 a year job that barely covered her student loans. Back before she'd watched her younger brother Miguel swallow pills he couldn't read the warning label for, before she'd held his hand in the hospital while he died because he'd been too ashamed to admit he couldn't read, too proud to ask for help. "Hi there," Elena said softly, pitching her voice low and warm. "That's a good book you've got." The girl's head snapped up, eyes wide and wet, and Elena's stomach dropped. Those eyes. Dark brown, almost black, rimmed with the kind of expensive mascara no 8-year-old should own. But it was the fear in them that made Elena's breath catch. Not the startled fear of a child caught doing something wrong, but the deep, animal terror of prey that knows the predator is close. "I'm not supposed to talk to strangers." The girl's voice came out hoarse, like she'd been crying for a while. Her accent carried the particular rhythm of money, of private schools and country clubs, completely at odds with the desperation rolling off her in waves. "Smart rule," Elena agreed. She settled more comfortably on the floor, crossing her legs, showing she wasn't going anywhere. "I'm Miss Elena. I work here. See?" She pointed to her name tag, the plastic one with the Riverside Public Library logo that she'd worn for 3 years. "What's your name?" The girl hesitated, fingers tightening on the book. "Sophia. That's a beautiful name." Elena kept her voice gentle, non-threatening. "Sophia, can I ask you something? Are you waiting for someone?" Sophia's lower lip trembled. She looked toward the library entrance, then back at Elena, and something in her expression shifted. A decision made, a risk taken. "My driver. He's supposed to pick me up after school, but he's late. He's always late on Tuesdays because he has to." She stopped abruptly, as if she'd said too much. Elena filed that information away. A driver, private school uniform, expensive shoes, even if they were scuffed. This was a child from the other side of Riverside, from the estates up on the hill where Elena had never been invited and never would be. "Well, you're safe here while you wait. The library's a good place to be. I hate it here." The words burst out of Sophia with surprising venom. "I hate all the books. I hate that everyone can read them except me. I hate being stupid." There it was, the wound laid bare. Elena's chest constricted. She thought of Miguel at 12, throwing his textbooks across their shared bedroom, screaming that he was dumb, that his brain didn't work right, that he'd never be anything. She thought of all the teachers who'd agreed with him, who'd written him off, who'd never bothered to look deeper than his failing grades. "You're not stupid," Elena said firmly, "not even a little bit." "Yes, I am." Sophia's voice broke. "Everyone says so. My teachers, my tutors. They think I don't hear them, but I do. She's not applying herself. She lacks focus. Perhaps she's just not academically inclined." She mimicked adult voices with bitter accuracy. "My mom thought I was broken. That's why she—" Sophia stopped again, swallowing hard. Elena's mind raced, piecing together clues. The way Sophia held the book upside down. The tears of frustration. The self-loathing that no 8-year-old should possess. "Sophia, can I show you something? It's not scary, I promise. Just a little experiment." Sophia wiped her nose with the back of her hand, leaving a smear across her cheek. "What kind of experiment?" "The kind that might help." Elena pulled her phone from her pocket, opened the Notes app, and typed a simple sentence in large letters. The cat sat on the mat. She held it out to Sophia. "Can you read this for me?" Sophia stared at the screen. Her eyes moved across the letters, then jumped back, then forward again. Her brow furrowed. Her breathing quickened. The cat. She squeezed her eyes shut. The letters won't stay still. They keep moving. "Okay." Elena's heart rate kicked up, but she kept her voice calm. "That's okay. Now look at me, Sophia. Right at me." When the girl met her eyes, Elena asked, "Do you see letters moving around when you're not trying to read? Like if you look at that exit sign over there?" "No. Only when I try to read. Only when it matters." Sophia's voice had gone small and ashamed again. Elena wanted to cry. She wanted to scream. She wanted to find every teacher and tutor who'd failed this child and shake them until they understood what they'd done. Instead, she smiled. "Sophia, I need you to listen to me very carefully. You are not stupid. You're not broken. Your brain works differently, that's all. It's called dyslexia, and it's actually pretty common. About 1 in 5 people have it." Sophia blinked. What? "Dyslexia. It means your brain processes written words differently than other people's brains do. But here's the important part. It has nothing to do with how smart you are. In fact, a lot of really brilliant people have dyslexia. Scientists, artists, business owners. Your brain just needs to learn to read in a different way." "A different way?" Hope flickered in Sophia's eyes, fragile as a candle flame. "There's a different way?" "There is." Elena glanced around the library at the empty tables, at the clock that showed she had 2 more hours before her shift ended, at the stack of returned books she was supposed to be reshelving, at the broken printer she was supposed to call someone about, at all the mundane tasks that suddenly seemed completely irrelevant. "Do you want me to show you?" Sophia nodded, still cautious, still afraid to believe. "But I've tried everything. My dad hired 15 tutors. Nothing worked." "That's because they were probably trying to teach you the same way they teach everyone else. But you're not everyone else." Elena stood, brushed off her jeans, and extended her hand. "Come on. I've got some supplies in the back room. Let's see what we can do." Sophia took her hand. Her palm was small and warm and slightly damp with nervous sweat. Elena led her to the library's small activity room, the one they used for story time and craft sessions, and pulled out the bins of supplies she kept for her adult literacy classes. Sand trays, colored markers, textured letter cards, a whole arsenal of tools she'd accumulated over the years, bought with her own money because the library's budget didn't stretch that far. "Okay," Elena said, settling Sophia at a table. "We're going to start with something called multisensory learning. That means we're going to use more than just your eyes. We're going to use your hands, your ears, your whole body to help your brain understand letters. Sound good?" Sophia nodded, watching Elena with an intensity that made her chest ache. Elena poured sand into a shallow tray and set it in front of Sophia. "I want you to write the letter A in the sand with your finger, like this." She demonstrated, dragging her index finger through the sand to form the letter. Feel how the lines connect. Feel the shape of it. Sophia copied her, hesitant at first, then with more confidence. "It's scratchy." "Good, that's your brain making connections. Now say the sound it makes while you write it." "Ah. Ah." Sophia traced the letter again, then again, her movements becoming smoother, more assured. "Ah." They worked through the alphabet, one letter at a time, building sounds into words, words into simple sentences. Elena pulled out color-coded cards, assigning different colors to vowels and consonants, helping Sophia's brain create patterns and associations. She used games, songs, movement, anything to bypass the traditional reading pathways that had failed this child so completely. An hour passed, then another. Elena forgot about her shift ending, forgot about everything except the small miracle happening in front of her. Sophia's frustration gradually gave way to concentration, then to excitement. Her hands moved more confidently across the cards. Her voice grew stronger as she sounded out words. And then, 2 hours into their impromptu lesson, Sophia read her first complete sentence without help. The cat sat on the mat. 5 simple words. 5 words that most children learned at 5 or 6 years old. 5 words that this 8-year-old girl had never been able to read until this moment. Sophia's eyes went wide. Her mouth fell open. She looked at Elena, then back at the card, then at Elena again. "I did it," she whispered. "I read it. I really read it. You really did." Elena's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. "You're amazing, Sophia. You just needed someone to show you the right way." Sophia threw her arms around Elena's neck, sobbing into her shoulder, but these were different tears, tears of relief and joy and something that might have been hope. Elena held her, this child she'd known for less than 3 hours, and felt something shift inside her chest. This was why she'd gone into debt for her degree. This was why she stayed at a job that paid barely enough to survive. This moment, right here, this was everything. The activity room door slammed open with enough force to crack the doorframe. Elena's head snapped up, her body automatically curling around Sophia in protection. 4 men filled the doorway, all dressed in expensive suits that did nothing to hide the weapons bulging beneath their jackets. They moved with military precision, fanning out to cover the exits, their eyes scanning the room for threats. Elena's heart stopped, then started again at triple speed. Behind them, a 5th man entered. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair shot through with silver at the temples. His suit probably cost more than Elena made in 6 months. But it was his face that made her blood run cold. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could have been carved from granite, and eyes that held the kind of darkness that came from doing things normal people only had nightmares about. He looked like he could kill someone without blinking, like he probably had, like he might do it again right now if given sufficient reason. His gaze swept the room, passed over Elena without interest, and locked onto Sophia. His entire body went rigid. "Sophia." His voice was rough, scraped raw with an emotion Elena couldn't name. "Christo, Sophia, where have you been? I've had 20 men searching for 3 hours. Your driver said you never came out of school. I thought—" He stopped, his jaw working, and Elena realized with shock that this terrifying man was fighting back tears. Sophia pulled away from Elena and turned to face him. "Hi, Daddy." Daddy. This man was Sophia's father, which meant Elena's mind raced, connecting dots she'd been too focused to see before. The driver, the private school, the 15 tutors, the wealth that dripped from every aspect of Sophia's life, the fear in her eyes when Elena had first found her. Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. She knew who this man was. Everyone in Riverside knew who Dominic Castellano was, even if they pretended not to. You didn't grow up in this city without learning which names to never say out loud, which businesses to avoid, which streets belonged to which families. The Castellanos owned half the city, the restaurants, the construction companies, the unions. And everyone knew what else they owned, what else they controlled, even if no one could prove it in court. Elena had just spent 2 hours alone with the daughter of the most dangerous man in Riverside. Her hands started shaking. She clasped them together, trying to hide the tremor, trying to look calm and unthreatening and like someone who absolutely had not just kidnapped a mafia boss's child. "I'm so sorry," she started, her voice coming out higher than normal. "I didn't know. She was crying, and I just wanted to help." Dominic's eyes cut to her for the first time, really looking at her, and Elena felt the weight of that gaze like a physical thing. He took in her cheap cardigan, her worn jeans, her scuffed sneakers. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Calculation, assessment, threat evaluation. "Who are you?" Not a question, a demand. "Elena Vasquez. I work here. I'm a librarian." The words tumbled out too fast. Sophia was upset, so I thought I could help. I teach literacy classes. I have a master's degree in literacy education. I wasn't trying to. I would never. She taught me to read, Daddy. Sophia's voice cut through Elena's babbling. She held up the card with, "The cat sat on the mat," written on it. "Look, I can read this. I really can. Watch." She read the sentence aloud, slowly but clearly, and the pride in her voice made Elena's heart clench. Dominic stared at his daughter, then at the card, then at Elena. His expression didn't change, but the air in the room shifted, became charged with something Elena couldn't identify. Dangerous. Definitely dangerous. "You taught her to read." His voice was flat, emotionless. "In 2 hours. It's not that simple," Elena said quickly. "She has dyslexia. It's a learning difference that affects how the brain processes written language. With the right techniques, the right approach." She was babbling again, couldn't seem to stop. "I used multi-sensory methods, color coding, tactile learning. She's incredibly bright. She just needed someone to teach her in a way that works with her brain instead of against it." Dominic walked toward her. His men stayed by the door, hands inside their jackets, ready. Elena's back hit the wall. She hadn't even realized she was retreating. He stopped 2 feet away, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody that probably cost more than her rent. 15 tutors, he said softly. 15 highly educated, highly paid tutors, specialists from Boston, New York, even one from London. None of them could do what you just did. Why is that? Elena's mouth went dry. I don't know. Maybe they weren't using the right methods. Maybe they didn't understand dyslexia well enough. Maybe. She stopped, seeing something shift in his eyes. Maybe they didn't care enough to try. Maybe, he agreed. His gaze flicked to Sophia, who was tracing letters in the sand tray, absorbed in her discovery. When he looked back at Elena, his expression had changed subtly. Less threat, more something else. What's your name again? Elena. Elena Vasquez. Elena Vasquez. He said her name slowly, like he was memorizing it, like he was deciding something. My daughter can read because of you. She always could, she just needed the right tools. 15 tutors, he repeated. 2 years of trying. Specialists, therapists, doctors. My wife spent her last year alive taking Sophia from appointment to appointment, trying to fix what everyone said was broken. And you, he gestured at her, at the humble activity room, at the cheap supplies scattered across the table. You did it in 2 hours. Elena didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know if there was a right answer that wouldn't get her killed or disappeared or whatever happened to people who accidentally got involved with men like Dominic Castellano. So she said nothing, just stood there with her back against the wall and waited for whatever came next. What came next was Sophia running over and grabbing her father's hand. "Daddy, can Miss Elena come home with us? She can teach me more. I want to learn more. Please." "Sophia," Dominic started, but his daughter was already pulling on his arm, bouncing with excitement that Elena hadn't seen in her before. "Please, Daddy. She's nice. She didn't make me feel stupid. She showed me that my brain isn't broken, it just works different. Can she come? Please, please, please." Dominic looked at Elena over his daughter's head. Their eyes met, and Elena saw something in his gaze that made her stomach drop. Not threat this time, but possibility. Calculation. He was a man who saw opportunities and seized them, who turned situations to his advantage, who never let a useful resource slip away. And Elena had just proven herself very, very useful. "We need to talk," he said. "Privately." He turned to his men. "Marco, take Sophia to the car. Give her your phone. Let her play whatever game she wants." "But Daddy," Sophia protested. "Now, Principessa, Miss Elena and I need to have a grown-up conversation. I'll be right out." Marco, a man built like a refrigerator with a face that suggested he'd broken more noses than he had fingers, gently took Sophia's hand. "Come on, little boss. I got that game you like, the one with the cats." Sophia went reluctantly, looking back at Elena with an expression that was part hope, part fear. The door closed behind them, leaving Elena alone with Dominic Castellano and 3 of his men. Elena's survival instincts screamed at her to run, to apologize profusely and promise never to speak to Sophia again, to forget this ever happened and go back to her small, safe, anonymous life. But she thought of Sophia's face when she'd read that first sentence. She thought of Miguel, dead at 19 because no one had cared enough to help him. She thought of all the children who fell through the cracks because the system didn't know how to catch them. "I didn't mean to overstep," she said, forcing her voice steady. "I was just trying to help." "I know." Dominic pulled out a chair and sat down, gesturing for her to do the same. After a moment's hesitation, Elena sat across from him. His men remained standing, watching. "Tell me about dyslexia. Everything you know." So Elena talked. She explained how dyslexia affected approximately 20% of the population, how it had nothing to do with intelligence, how it was neurological rather than behavioral. She talked about phonological awareness, orthographic processing, the importance of multisensory instruction. She talked about famous people with dyslexia, entrepreneurs, artists, scientists, who'd succeeded not despite their learning difference but sometimes because of it, because their brains made connections other people missed. Dominic listened without interrupting, his dark eyes fixed on her face, and Elena had the unsettling feeling that he was memorizing every word, cataloging every piece of information for future use. When she, finally, ran out of things to say, he was quiet for a long moment. "My wife died 2 years ago," he said finally. His voice was carefully neutral, but Elena heard the grief underneath. "Car accident. She was driving back from another specialist appointment in Boston. Sophia was supposed to be with her, but she had a cold, so I kept her home." He paused. Maria blamed herself for Sophia's struggles. She thought she'd done something wrong during pregnancy, or that it was genetic, her fault somehow. The guilt ate her alive. And now you're telling me that all of this, all of the pain, all of the specialists, all of the failure, could have been avoided if someone had just used the right teaching method. Elena's throat tightened. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Be useful. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, and Elena saw the ruthless businessman beneath the grieving father. I want to hire you. Full-time. Live-in position. Your only job is teaching Sophia to read at grade level. Name your price. Elena's mind went blank. What? You heard me. Name your price. Whatever you're making here, I'll triple it, quadruple it. You'll have your own suite in my home, access to whatever resources you need, complete autonomy in how you teach. All I ask is that you give Sophia what 15 other tutors couldn't. I have a job, I have an apartment, I have a job that pays you $32,000 a year and an apartment in a building with broken heating and a landlord who hasn't fixed the water damage in your bathroom for 6 months. Dominic's expression didn't change. I do my research, Miss Vasquez. You have $48,000 in student loan debt. Your car failed inspection last month and you can't afford the repairs. You teach free literacy classes 3 nights a week because you're too compassionate for your own good. You're drowning, and you're too proud to ask for help. Elena's face burned. The accuracy of his information was terrifying. How do you... I make it my business to know things, especially about people who spend time alone with my daughter. He pulled a pen from his jacket pocket and wrote a number on one of Sophia's practice cards. He slid it across the table. Elena looked down at the number. 50,000. Her brain stuttered, trying to process it. That's per year? Per month. The room tilted. $50,000 per month. $600,000 per year. More money than Elena had ever imagined having. Enough to pay off her loans in 2 months. Enough to buy a new car, a nice apartment, everything she'd been struggling for. Enough to finally breathe. Enough to make her completely dependent on a man who could make her disappear if she ever became inconvenient. I can't, she heard herself say. I appreciate the offer, but I can't work for you. Dominic's eyebrow rose slightly. Why not? Because I know who you are. The words came out steadier than she felt. I know what you do, and I can't. I won't be part of that world. My daughter needs you. Your daughter needs someone who can teach her to read. That doesn't have to be me. I can recommend other specialists, people who understand dyslexia, and... She trusts you. Dominic's voice cut through her protests like a blade. In 2 hours, you gave her something no one else could. Hope. You made her believe she wasn't broken. Do you know how rare that is? Do you know how many people have looked at my daughter and seen nothing but a problem to be solved? Elena's resistance wavered. She thought of Sophia's face, the joy and relief when she'd read that simple sentence. She thought of how many other moments like that Sophia could have, should have, if someone just gave her the right support. I'm not asking you to be part of my business, Dominic continued. I'm asking you to teach my daughter. That's all. You'll have no involvement in anything else. You'll be completely separate from that side of my life. That's not how it works, Elena said. If I live in your house, if I take your money, I become complicit. You become Sophia's teacher. Nothing more, nothing less. He stood, buttoning his jacket. Think about it. You don't have to decide right now, but Sophia needs consistency. She needs someone who won't give up on her after a few weeks when the work gets hard. She needs someone who actually cares whether she learns to read or just collects a paycheck. He walked to the door, then paused. I'll have my driver bring her back tomorrow. Same time. You can continue the lesson. No obligation, no pressure. Just give her 1 more day, then decide. He left before Elena could respond, his men following like shadows. The activity room suddenly felt enormous and empty. Elena sat alone, staring at the number on the card, her mind spinning. $50,000 a month. Sophia's hopeful face, Dominic Castellanos' dark eyes, the sound of Miguel's last breaths in the hospital. She should say no. She should run as far and fast as possible from this situation. She should go back to her small, safe life and forget this ever happened. But she knew she wouldn't. Because somewhere in this city, a little girl was probably sitting in an expensive car, tracing letters in condensation on the window, believing for the first time that maybe she wasn't stupid after all. And Elena couldn't take that away from her. Not for anything. The next day, Sophia returned to the library at exactly 3:15. Elena was waiting in the activity room, supplies laid out, lesson plan prepared. She'd spent the entire night researching dyslexia interventions, reviewing her graduate school notes, preparing materials. She'd also spent several hours having a mild panic attack about what she was getting herself into, but that was less productive, and she tried not to think about it. Sophia bounced through the door, Marco trailing behind her like a well-dressed mountain. "Miss Elena, I practiced last night. Want to see?" She pulled out a notebook covered in carefully traced letters, each one color-coded according to the system Elena had taught her. "That's wonderful, Sophia." Elena's chest felt tight looking at the evidence of Sophia's dedication. "Did you do this all by yourself?" "Daddy helped. He didn't know the colors, so I taught him." Sophia beamed with pride. "I taught my daddy something, can you believe it?" Elena couldn't, actually. She couldn't imagine Dominic Castellano sitting down with colored markers, learning his daughter's system, patiently supporting her practice. But the evidence was right there in Sophia's neat handwriting, in her excitement, in the way she said, "Daddy," with such obvious love. They worked for 2 hours, building on the previous day's foundation. Sophia struggled sometimes, frustrated when letters wouldn't cooperate, but she never gave up. She had a determination that reminded Elena of herself at that age. Stubborn, fierce, refusing to let the world beat her down. When the lesson ended, Sophia hugged Elena tightly. "Will you come back tomorrow?" Elena hesitated. She'd been so focused on the teaching that she'd managed to avoid thinking about Dominic's offer. "I don't know, sweetie." "Please." Sophia pulled back, looking up at Elena with those dark eyes that were so much like her father's. "You're the only one who makes me feel smart." Marco cleared his throat. "Boss wants to see you, if you're willing." Elena's stomach dropped. "Now?" "Car's outside." She should refuse. She should set boundaries, maintain professional distance, keep herself separate from the Castellano world. But Sophia was looking at her with such hope, and Elena had never been good at disappointing children. "Okay," she heard herself say, "just for a few minutes." The car was a black Mercedes with tinted windows and leather seats that probably cost more than Elena's entire apartment building. Sophia chattered the whole drive, pointing out landmarks, telling Elena about her school, her friends, her favorite books. Marco drove in silence, his eyes constantly checking mirrors, scanning for threats Elena couldn't see. The Castellano estate appeared through the trees like something from another world. 10 acres of manicured grounds, a mansion that looked like it had been transplanted from a European castle, gates that probably cost more than Elena's student loan debt. Armed guards stood at the entrance, waving them through without question. Elena's hands were shaking again. She clasped them in her lap, trying to project a calm she absolutely did not feel. The interior of the mansion was even more intimidating than the exterior. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, artwork that Elena suspected was original rather than prints. Staff moved through hallways with quiet efficiency, their eyes sliding past Elena like she was invisible. Everything screamed wealth and power and danger. Sophia grabbed Elena's hand and pulled her through a maze of corridors. "Daddy's in his office. He works there a lot. Come on." The office was all dark wood and leather, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined with volumes that actually looked read rather than decorative. Dominic sat behind a massive desk, typing on a laptop, but he looked up when they entered. His expression softened slightly when he saw Sophia. "Principessa, how was the lesson?" "Amazing." Miss Elena taught me about syllables and we read a whole page from a real book, not just the practice cards. A whole page, Daddy. Sophia bounced on her toes. Can she stay for dinner? Please. That's up to Miss Elena. Dominic's gaze shifted to her, and Elena felt that same unsettling assessment from yesterday. Would you join us? It wasn't really a question. Elena recognized a command when she heard one, no matter how politely it was phrased. I should get home. I have things to… Please. Sophia grabbed her hand. Just dinner. Then Marco can drive you home. Please, Miss Elena. Elena looked down at Sophia's hopeful face, then at Dominic, who was watching this interaction with an expression she couldn't read. She was trapped, and they both knew it. She couldn't disappoint Sophia. And Dominic knew she couldn't disappoint Sophia, which meant he'd just backed her into a corner without ever raising his voice or making a threat. Just dinner, Elena agreed. Then I really do need to get home. Dinner was served in a dining room that could have hosted 50 people but felt oddly intimate with just the 3 of them at one end of the long table. The food was incredible. Pasta made fresh that day, vegetables from the estate's garden, bread that was still warm from the oven. Elena tried to eat slowly to show proper manners, but she was hungrier than she'd realized. She couldn't remember the last time she'd had a meal that wasn't ramen or peanut butter sandwiches. Sophia talked non-stop, telling her father everything they'd learned, showing off her new skills, glowing with pride. Dominic listened attentively, asking questions, praising her progress. He was good with her, Elena realized with surprise, patient and kind in a way that didn't match his reputation at all. After dinner, Sophia wanted to show Elena her room, a princess palace of pink and white, with more books than Elena's entire library branch and toys that probably cost more than Elena made in a year. But what caught Elena's attention was the reading corner, with its comfortable chair and good lighting and a shelf of picture books that looked well-loved despite Sophia's inability to read them. My mom used to read to me every night, Sophia said quietly, running her fingers along the book spines. Before the accident. She'd do all the voices and make me laugh. I miss that. Elena's throat tightened. I bet she was wonderful. She was sad a lot, though. Because of me. Because I couldn't read. Sophia's voice went small. Daddy doesn't know I know that. But I heard them fighting sometimes. Mom crying, saying it was her fault. I tried so hard to learn, Miss Elena. I really did. But the letters wouldn't work right, and everyone kept saying I needed to try harder, and I didn't know how to try harder than I was already trying. Elena knelt down so they were eye level. Sophia, listen to me. None of that was your fault. Not one bit. Your brain is beautiful and unique, and it works exactly the way it's supposed to work. The problem wasn't you. The problem was that no one knew how to teach you properly. Do you understand? Sophia nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Will you keep teaching me, even if it takes a long time? Even if I mess up sometimes? I'll teach you as long as you want to learn, Elena promised and meant it. Whatever happened with Dominic's job offer, whatever complicated situation she was walking into, she couldn't abandon this child. She just couldn't. When Marco drove her home that night, Elena sat in the back of the Mercedes and stared out at the city passing by. Her apartment building looked even more run down than usual when they pulled up. Peeling paint, broken security door, the smell of garbage from the overflowing dumpster. Marco's expression didn't change, but Elena felt the judgment anyway. This was what she was going back to. This was what she was choosing over the Castellano mansion. She lay awake most of the night, staring at her water-stained ceiling, trying to make a decision that felt impossible. On one hand, safety, independence, her principles. On the other hand, Sophia's face when she'd read that first sentence, the promise she'd just made to keep teaching her, the knowledge that Sophia needed her in a way that transcended money or danger or moral complications. By the time dawn broke, Elena still hadn't decided, but she knew she'd go back to the library that afternoon. She'd teach Sophia another lesson, and another, and eventually she'd have to make a choice about what came next. She just hoped it was the right one. 3 weeks passed in a blur of daily lessons and careful avoidance of the decision hanging over Elena's head. Sophia progressed rapidly, her confidence growing with each successfully read sentence. Elena fell into a routine: teach at the library during the day, work with Sophia in the afternoon, go home and prepare the next day's materials. It was exhausting. It was rewarding. It was unsustainable. Dominic never pushed. He'd appear sometimes at the end of lessons, asking about Sophia's progress, thanking Elena for her time. He never mentioned the job offer again, but Elena felt it hanging between them, unspoken but present, like a sword waiting to drop. On a Tuesday afternoon, exactly 3 weeks after that first lesson, everything changed. Elena was working with Sophia on multi-syllable words when the activity room door opened. Not Marco this time. Dominic himself, and something in his expression made Elena's stomach clench. "Sophia, go wait in the car with Marco. I need to speak with Miss Elena." "But we're not done. Now, Principessa." His tone allowed no argument. Sophia gathered her things reluctantly, shooting Elena a worried look before leaving. The door closed behind her, and Elena was alone with Dominic for the first time since that initial conversation. The air felt charged, dangerous. "Is something wrong?" Elena asked. "That depends." Dominic moved to the window, looking out at the parking lot where his men were stationed. "Are you aware that you've been photographed with my daughter 17 times in the past 3 weeks?" Elena's blood ran cold. "What?" "The Moretti family. They're competitors of mine. They've been watching my movements, looking for weaknesses. And you, Miss Elena, have just become a very visible weakness." He turned to face her, and his expression was grim. "They know who you are, where you live, where you work. They know that Sophia trusts you, that I've been bringing her here every day, which means they know that you matter to us. I don't. I'm just her tutor. I'm nobody. You're somebody to Sophia, which makes you somebody to me, which makes you a target." He pulled his phone from his pocket and showed her a series of photos. Elena and Sophia entering the library. Elena and Sophia in the activity room, visible through the window. Elena getting into the Mercedes. These were taken by Moretti's men. They're building a file, establishing patterns, preparing. Preparing for what? But Elena already knew the answer. To use you against me. To hurt Sophia by hurting you. To send a message that I can't protect the people I care about. Dominic's jaw tightened. "I won't let that happen." Elena's legs felt weak. She sat down heavily in one of the small chairs. "So, what are you saying? That I should stop teaching Sophia? That I should disappear?" "I'm saying you need to make a decision. Right now. Either you come to work for me, live at the estate where I can protect you, or you walk away completely. No more lessons. No more contact with Sophia. For your own safety." "That's not fair." Elena's voice came out sharper than intended. "You can't make me choose between my safety and abandoning a child who needs me." "I'm not making you do anything. The Morettis made this choice when they decided to target you. I'm just giving you options." He moved closer, and Elena saw something in his eyes that might have been regret. "I know what I'm asking. I know it's not fair, but Sophia's made more progress with you in 3 weeks than she did in 2 years with anyone else. And more than that, she's happy. She believes in herself again. I can't, I won't, take that away from her unless I have no other choice." Elena thought about Sophia's face that morning, the pride when she'd read an entire paragraph without help. She thought about the promise she'd made to keep teaching her. She thought about her brother, dying because no one had cared enough to help him learn. She thought about the water damage in her bathroom, the student loan bills piling up, the car that wouldn't start half the time. The life she'd been barely surviving rather than living. "If I agree," she said slowly, "I need conditions." Dominic's expression didn't change, but she saw something shift in his posture. Relief, maybe, or satisfaction. "Name them." "I teach Sophia, that's all. I'm not part of your business. I'm not involved in anything illegal. I'm not a pawn in whatever war you're fighting with the Morettis. I'm just a teacher." "Agreed." "I can leave whenever I want. If I decide this isn't working, if I feel unsafe, if I just can't handle it anymore, I walk away, no questions asked." "Agreed, though I'll insist on providing security until the Moretti situation is resolved." Elena took a deep breath. "And Sophia comes first. Always. Her education, her well-being, her happiness, that's the priority. Not your convenience, not your schedule, not your business needs. Sophia comes first." Dominic smiled slightly, and it transformed his face, made him look younger and less dangerous. "Miss Vasquez, Sophia has always come first. That's why you're here." He extended his hand. "Do we have a deal?" Elena looked at his hand. Strong, scarred, the hand of a man who'd done terrible things in the name of protecting his family. She thought about all the reasons this was a bad idea. She thought about all the ways this could go wrong. Then she thought about Sophia, and she took his hand. "We have a deal." The next morning, Marco arrived at Elena's apartment building with a moving crew. Elena had expected a few hours to pack, maybe a day to get her affairs in order. Instead, Dominic had sent a team of professionals who boxed up her entire life in less than 2 hours. Her books, her clothes, her modest furniture, all of it loaded into a truck while Elena stood in her empty apartment and wondered what she'd just done. "Boss says you don't need to worry about the lease," Marco told her, his rumbling voice surprisingly gentle. "He's taking care of it. And the student loans. And the car repairs. Consider it a signing bonus." Elena's pride wanted to refuse, but her practical side knew better. She was already compromising her principles by taking this job. She might as well accept the benefits that came with it. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Thank the boss. He takes care of his people." Marco's expression was unreadable. "And you're his people now, Miss Elena. For better or worse." The estate looked different when Elena arrived, knowing she'd be staying. More permanent. More real. Staff greeted her with polite nods, showing her to a suite on the second floor that was bigger than her entire apartment had been. Bedroom, sitting room, private bathroom with a tub that could fit 3 people. Windows overlooking the gardens. A desk already set up with a new laptop and printer. "For lesson planning," said the housekeeper, a stern-looking woman named Rosa who'd apparently been with the family for 20 years. "Mr. Castellano wants you to have everything you need." Sophia burst in before Elena could even unpack, throwing herself into Elena's arms. "You're staying! You're really staying! Daddy said you were, but I didn't believe it until I saw your stuff. Can we have a lesson now? Please?" Elena laughed despite her nerves. "Let me at least put my clothes away first." "I'll help." Sophia started pulling items from boxes with enthusiasm that was more hindrance than help, but Elena didn't have the heart to stop her. They spent the afternoon organizing Elena's belongings, Sophia chattering constantly about how wonderful it was to have Elena living here, all the things they could do together, how she'd finally have someone to read bedtime stories to her again. That night, after dinner, Sophia appeared at Elena's door in her pajamas, clutching a copy of Charlotte's Web. "Will you read to me, like my mom used to?" Elena's throat tightened. "Of course, sweetie." They curled up together in Elena's bed, Sophia tucked against her side, and Elena read about Wilbur the pig and Charlotte the spider. Sophia followed along, sometimes reading words she recognized, sometimes just listening. When Elena reached the end of the chapter, Sophia's eyes were drooping. "Miss Elena," she murmured sleepily. "I'm glad you're here. Me too, sweetie. Me too." After Sophia left, Elena lay awake in her enormous bed, staring at the ceiling. This wasn't her life. This was a temporary situation, a job that would end eventually. She couldn't let herself get too comfortable here, couldn't let herself forget that this world wasn't hers. But when she finally fell asleep, she dreamed of Sophia's smile, and for the first time in years, her dreams weren't haunted by her brother's death. The routine established itself quickly. Mornings were for formal lessons, phonics, reading comprehension, writing practice. Elena pushed Sophia hard but never beyond her limits, always watching for signs of frustration or fatigue. Afternoons were for application, reading real books, writing stories, playing word games. Evenings were family time, with Dominic joining them for dinner, asking about Sophia's progress, listening to her read aloud with an expression of wonder that never quite faded. Elena watched him during these dinners, trying to reconcile the man who patiently helped his daughter sound out difficult words with the man whose name made grown adults pale. He was gentle with Sophia, firm but fair, quick to praise and slow to criticize. He asked Elena's opinion on teaching strategies, deferred to her expertise, never undermined her authority with his daughter. He was also, Elena couldn't help but notice, incredibly attractive when he smiled. She tried not to think about that, tried to maintain professional distance. But it was hard when they spent so much time together, when she saw him at his most vulnerable, watching his daughter learn, struggling with his own guilt over the years Sophia had suffered, working so hard to be the father she deserved. 6 weeks into her tenure at the estate, Sophia had her breakthrough. They were in the library, the mansion's library, not the public one, a room full of leather-bound classics and comfortable chairs. Sophia was reading The Secret Garden, slowly but steadily working through a chapter. Elena sat nearby, available if needed, but letting Sophia work independently. And then it happened. Sophia read an entire page without stopping, without hesitating, without asking for help. She looked up at Elena, eyes wide with shock and joy. "I did it," she whispered. "I just read a whole page, Miss Elena." "You did?" Elena's vision blurred with tears. "You're amazing, Sophia." Sophia screamed, an ear-splitting shriek of pure triumph, and launched herself at Elena, nearly knocking them both over. "I can read. I can really read. I'm not stupid. I'm not broken. I can read." Elena held her, laughing and crying at the same time, feeling the weight of 2 years of failure and shame lifting from this child's shoulders. This was why she'd become a teacher. This moment, right here, this was everything. "What's wrong?" Dominic burst through the library door, 2 of his men behind him, hands reaching for weapons. "I heard screaming." Daddy, look." Sophia grabbed the book and read the page aloud, her voice strong and confident. "I read it all by myself. No help, I just read it." Dominic stood frozen in the doorway. Elena watched his face transform. Shock, joy, relief, and something that might have been grief all mixing together. Tears spilled down his cheeks, and he didn't bother wiping them away. "Principessa," he said, his voice breaking, "you're reading." "I'm reading." Sophia ran to him, and he scooped her up, holding her tight. "Miss Elena taught me. She fixed my brain." "She didn't fix anything," Dominic said, looking at Elena over Sophia's head. "Your brain was never broken. Miss Elena just showed you how to use it." He mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." Elena nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She'd done it. She'd given Sophia the gift her brother had never received. She'd broken through the walls of shame and failure and shown this child that she was capable of anything. It was worth it. Whatever compromises she'd made, whatever dangers she'd accepted, it was worth it for this moment. That evening, after Sophia had gone to bed still clutching The Secret Garden, Elena found herself unable to sleep. She wandered downstairs thinking she'd make tea in the kitchen and found Dominic in the library. He sat in one of the leather chairs holding a photo frame, staring at it with an expression of such profound sadness that Elena almost turned around and left. But he looked up before she could retreat. "Can't sleep?" "Too much excitement, I think." Elena hesitated. "I can leave you alone if—" "Stay, please." He gestured to the chair across from him. "I could use the company." Elena sat, tucking her feet under her. In the dim lamplight, Dominic looked older, more tired, more human. He held up the photo frame, a beautiful woman with Sophia's eyes and smile. "My wife, Maria. She was lovely. She was brilliant, funny, kind. She deserved so much better than me." He set the frame down carefully. "She spent the last year of her life convinced she'd failed Sophia, convinced that Sophia's struggles were somehow her fault. I tried to tell her it wasn't true, but she couldn't hear it. The guilt consumed her. I'm sorry. The accident." His voice caught. "The police said she wasn't paying attention, that she drifted into oncoming traffic. But I've always wondered if maybe she just couldn't take the pain anymore. If maybe she chose—" He stopped, shaking his head. "I'll never know, and Sophia will never know. But I live with that question every day." Elena didn't know what to say. There was nothing to say that could ease that kind of pain. So she just sat with him in the silence, letting him grieve. "You gave her something today," Dominic said finally. "You gave her the belief that she's capable, that she's smart, that she's not broken. Maria would have loved you for that. She would have been so grateful." "I just did my job." "No, you did more than that. You cared. You saw my daughter as a person, not a problem. You believed in her when everyone else had given up." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and met Elena's eyes. "You saved her, Elena. You saved my daughter." The use of her first name, the first time he'd called her anything but Miss Vasquez, sent a shiver down Elena's spine. The air between them felt charged, heavy with something she didn't want to name. "She saved herself," Elena said. "I just gave her the tools." "Then thank you for the tools. Thank you for everything." He stood, and Elena thought he was leaving, but instead he moved to the window, looking out at the dark gardens. "The Moretti situation is escalating. My people have intercepted communications. They're planning something. I don't know what yet, but it's coming soon." Elena's stomach dropped. "Should I take Sophia somewhere safe?" "Nowhere is safe. Not from them." He turned back to her, and his expression was grim. "But I want you to know, I will protect you both, whatever it takes, whatever I have to do. You and Sophia are my priority. Nothing else matters." Dominic. His name felt strange on her tongue, intimate in a way that made her pulse quicken. "I'm not your responsibility. I'm just your family." He said it simply, as if it were obvious. "You became family the moment Sophia called you my Elena. The moment you chose to stay here despite the danger. The moment you proved you'd put her needs above your own safety. You're family, Elena, and I protect my family." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. She should leave. Should go back to her room and maintain professional distance, and not let this man with his dark eyes and protective instincts get under her skin. But she couldn't seem to move. "I should go," she said, not moving. "You should," he agreed, not looking away. They stood there for a long moment, the air between them crackling with tension. Then Dominic's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He checked it, and his expression hardened. Security alert. Perimeter breach. Probably nothing, but... He was already moving toward the door, already transforming from the grieving father into the dangerous man everyone feared. "Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me or Marco." He was gone before Elena could respond, leaving her alone in the library with her racing heart and the sudden, terrifying realization that she'd fallen for him, for Dominic Castellano, For a man who lived in a world of violence and danger. For a man who could never give her the safe, normal life she'd always imagined. For a man she was pretty sure she was falling in love with. The security alert turned out to be a deer that had somehow gotten through the outer fence, but it served as a reminder that the danger was real. Dominic increased security. More guards, more cameras, more protocols. Sophia wasn't allowed in the gardens without an armed escort. Elena's movements were monitored, not oppressively but noticeably. The estate started to feel less like a home and more like a fortress. Sophia sensed the tension. Her reading progress continued, but she became clingy, needing more reassurance, asking questions about why there were so many guards, why she couldn't go to the park anymore. Elena did her best to keep things normal, to maintain their routine, but it was getting harder. 3 weeks after the false alarm, Elena overheard a conversation she wasn't meant to hear. She was looking for Sophia, who'd disappeared after their afternoon lesson, and heard voices coming from Dominic's office. The door was slightly ajar. Elena knew she should walk away, but something in the tone of the conversation made her freeze. Targeting her specifically, Marco's voice grim and worried. They know she's important to Sophia. They know the boss cares about her. They're planning to grab her during the library trip next week. Cancel it. Dominic's voice was cold, controlled. No more trips off the estate until this is handled. With respect, boss, hiding them away isn't going to stop the Morettis. They're getting bolder. Last night's drive-by was a warning. They're coming for us, and they're going to use every weakness they can find. Then we eliminate the weakness. I'll move Elena somewhere safe, somewhere they can't find her. Witness protection, maybe. A new identity. Elena's blood ran cold. He was planning to send her away. And Sophia? Marco asked. You think she's going to accept losing another person she loves? After her mother? She'll adjust. Children are resilient. Children are traumatized. Sir, I've been with you for 15 years. I've never questioned your decisions. But this is wrong. You can't protect them by pushing them away. You protect them by ending the threat. I'm working on it. Work faster. Because if something happens to that woman or your daughter because you were too cautious to act. Marco stopped himself. I'm sorry, sir. That was out of line. No, you're right. Dominic sounded tired, defeated in a way Elena had never heard. I'm trying to play by rules that don't exist in this world. I'm trying to be better than my father, better than the man Maria married. But the Morettis don't care about my attempts at redemption. They care about power and territory and revenge. So, give them what they want. What they want is me dead and my empire in ruins. I can't give them that. Then give them fear. Remind them why people don't fuck with the Castellanos. Elena backed away from the door, her mind racing. She'd known, intellectually, what Dominic was, but hearing it discussed so casually, the violence, the power plays, the willingness to eliminate problems, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. She found Sophia in her room, reading Charlotte's Web to her stuffed animals. The sight of her, so innocent, so happy, so unaware of the danger surrounding her, made Elena's chest ache. Miss Elena! Sophia looked up with a bright smile. Want to hear me read? I'm doing all the voices like you taught me. I'd love to, sweetie. Elena sat on the floor next to Sophia's impromptu classroom and let the sound of the child's voice reading about friendship and loyalty wash over her. This was real, too. Sophia's progress, her joy, her healing. That mattered just as much as the danger, maybe more. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Dominic's plan to send her away, about Sophia's face when she'd lose another person she loved, about the Morettis and their threats. She thought about her brother, about all the choices that had led her to this moment. Around midnight, she heard a soft knock on her door. When she opened it, Dominic stood there, still dressed in his work clothes, looking exhausted. "Can we talk?" he asked. Elena stepped aside, letting him in. He moved to the window. the same position he'd taken in the library that night, and Elena realized it was his thinking pose, the way he gathered himself before difficult conversations. "I heard you today," she said before he could speak. "Outside your office. I know about the Moretti's plan. I know you're thinking about sending me away." His shoulders tensed. "I'm trying to keep you safe. By ripping me away from Sophia? By making her lose another person she depends on?" Elena moved closer, anger and fear mixing in her chest. "That's not protection, Dominic. That's trauma. Better trauma than dead." He turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole her breath. "You don't understand what these people are capable of, what they'll do to get to me. I've seen—" He stopped, jaw clenched. "I've seen what happens to innocent people who get caught in this world. I won't let that happen to you. That's not your decision to make. It's mine." Elena crossed her arms. "I chose to stay here. I chose to be part of Sophia's life. I knew the risks." "You didn't. You couldn't have. You're not—" He gestured at her, frustrated. "You're good, Elena. You're kind and compassionate, and you see the best in people. You don't belong in my world." "Maybe not, but I'm here anyway, and I'm not leaving Sophia. Not for you, not for the Morettis, not for anyone." She took a breath. "So instead of planning my escape, how about you plan their defeat?" Dominic stared at her. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You're fearless, do you know that? Completely, recklessly fearless." "I'm terrified," Elena corrected. "But I'm more afraid of abandoning a child who needs me than I am of some mobsters with guns." "Some mobsters with guns." He shook his head. "Elena, the Morettis have killed dozens of people. They've burned down buildings with families inside. They've tortured men for information and left their bodies in public as warnings. They're not going to hesitate to hurt you if it serves their purpose. Then stop them before they get the chance. I'm trying, but I'm also trying not to become the monster everyone thinks I am. I'm trying to build something different, something better, for Sophia, for—" He stopped, and something shifted in his expression. "For you." The air between them changed, became charged with the same electricity from that night in the library. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. "Dominic." "I can't send you away," he said quietly. "I've been trying to convince myself I could, that it was the right thing to do. But I can't, because Sophia needs you, and because—" He moved closer, and Elena could smell his cologne, could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "Because I need you, too." Elena's breath caught. "You don't mean that." "I do. I've tried not to. I've tried to keep this professional, to maintain distance. But you—" He reached up, his hand hovering near her face but not quite touching. "You walk into my home, and you transform everything. You give my daughter hope. You make me believe I can be better than what I was. You make me want things I thought I'd lost when Maria died." "What things?" Elena whispered. "Family. Love. A future that's not just about survival and power and revenge." His hand finally made contact, cupping her cheek with surprising gentleness. "You make me want to be the man you see when you look at me, instead of the man I actually am." Elena should step back, should remind him about professional boundaries and the impossibility of this situation, and all the reasons this was a terrible idea. But his hand was warm against her skin, and his eyes held a vulnerability she'd never seen before, and she was so tired of pretending she didn't feel this pull between them. "Who says you're not already that man?" she asked. Dominic's thumb traced her cheekbone. "You're the only person who's ever looked at me and not seen a monster. That's because you're not one. You're a father who loves his daughter, a man trying to do better, someone who—" She stopped, not quite brave enough to finish that sentence. "Someone who— what?" His voice was rough, urgent. "Someone I care about," Elena finished quietly. "More than I should. more than is smart or safe or reasonable. Dominic closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them again, Elena saw her own feelings reflected back at her. Elena, I can't promise you safety. I can't promise you a normal life. I can't even promise you tomorrow, not with the Morettis circling. But I can promise that I will fight with everything I have to protect you and Sophia. I can promise that you've become essential to us, to me, in a way I never expected. And I can promise that if you give me a chance, if you trust me, I will spend every day trying to be worthy of that trust. I already trust you, Elena said. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. Then trust me with this. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, to stop this before it became something they couldn't take back. But Elena didn't pull away. She met him halfway, and when their lips touched, everything else fell away. The danger, the complications, the impossibility of it all. There was just this moment, this connection, this feeling of rightness that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, both of them testing boundaries. Then Dominic's hand slid into her hair, and Elena's fingers gripped his shirt, and the kiss deepened into something desperate and necessary. Elena had been kissed before, but never like this, like she was air and he was drowning, like she was home and he'd been lost forever. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. I'm falling in love with you, he said. I know it's too soon. I know it's complicated, but I need you to know. I'm falling in love with you, Elena Vasquez, and I don't know how to stop. Elena's eyes burned with tears. Then don't stop, because I'm falling too. They stood there in her room, holding each other, and for just a moment Elena let herself believe that maybe, this could work. That love could be enough to bridge the gap between her world and his, that they could build something real and lasting despite the danger and the complications. Then the alarm started blaring, and reality came crashing back. Dominic's entire demeanor changed instantly. He pulled away from Elena, his hand going to the gun she hadn't realized he was carrying. Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. What's happening? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. He was already moving toward the door. Elena, whatever happens, protect Sophia. That's all that matters. Promise me. I promise. He was gone, leaving Elena alone with the sound of alarms and her racing heart. She ran to Sophia's room, finding the girl sitting up in bed, eyes wide with fear. Miss Elena? What's wrong? I don't know, sweetie, but we need to go to your panic room, okay? Like we practiced. Elena kept her voice calm even as her hands shook. She grabbed Sophia's hand and led her through the hidden door in her closet, into the reinforced safe room that Elena had hoped they'd never need to use. They huddled together in the small space, listening to the sounds of chaos outside. Shouting, running footsteps, something that might have been gunfire, though Elena prayed she was wrong. Sophia trembled against her, and Elena held her tight, whispering reassurances she didn't feel. Is Daddy okay? Sophia asked in a small voice. Your daddy is very strong and very smart. He's going to be fine. Elena hoped she was telling the truth. She thought about Dominic's kiss, about his confession, about the future they'd just barely begun to imagine. She thought about losing him before they'd even had a chance to explore what they could be. The panic room door had a small monitor showing security camera feeds. Elena watched as Dominic and his men moved through the house, guns drawn, searching for intruders. She saw the moment they found the breach. Someone had cut through the perimeter fence, gotten past the first line of security. She saw Dominic give orders, saw his men fan out, saw him transform into the dangerous man she'd only heard about. And then she saw them. 3 men in dark clothes moving through the garden toward the house, moving toward Sophia's wing, moving toward them. Elena's blood turned to ice. She looked at the panic room's phone, the one with a direct line to Dominic's cell. She grabbed it, dialed, prayed he'd answer. Elena. His voice was sharp, controlled. "Are you safe?" "There are 3 men heading toward Sophia's wing. Garden entrance. They're almost at the house." She heard him curse, heard him shouting orders to his men. "Stay in the panic room. Do not come out until I give the all clear. Do you understand?" "Yes, but—" The line went dead. Elena watched the monitors, heart in her throat as Dominic and his men intercepted the intruders. She turned Sophia away from the screen, not wanting her to see what was about to happen. But she couldn't look away herself, couldn't stop watching as the confrontation turned violent. Dominic moved with lethal efficiency, taking down 2 of the intruders before they could even react. His men handled the 3rd. It was over in less than a minute, but that minute felt like an eternity. Elena had known intellectually what Dominic was capable of, but seeing the cold precision with which he eliminated threats, made it viscerally real. This was the man she'd just kissed, the man she was falling in love with, a man who could kill without hesitation when his family was threatened. Elena should have been horrified, should have been repulsed. Instead, all she felt was relief that he was okay, that he'd stopped the threat, that Sophia was safe. What did that say about her? 20 minutes later, the all-clear came. Elena led Sophia out of the panic room, both of them shaking. Dominic was waiting in the hallway, blood on his shirt, a cut above his eye, but alive and whole. Sophia ran to him and he scooped her up, holding her so tight Elena thought he might never let go. "I'm okay, Principessa," he murmured into her hair. "You're okay. Everyone's okay." But they weren't okay. Not really, because this was just the beginning. The attack changed everything. Dominic went into full lockdown mode, tripled security, restricted all movement, turned the estate into an armed fortress. Sophia's lessons continued, but the joy had gone out of them. She was jumpy, easily startled, asking constantly if they were safe. Elena did her best to maintain normalcy, but it was impossible when armed guards stood outside every door. Elena and Dominic had no time alone. He was constantly in meetings, coordinating with his men, planning his response to the Morettis. When they did see each other, it was in passing, stolen glances and careful touches when Sophia wasn't looking. The confession they'd made, the kiss they'd shared, it all felt like a dream now, something that had happened in another lifetime. 3 days after the attack, Dominic called Elena to his office. She found him behind his desk, looking more exhausted than she'd ever seen him. Dark circles under his eyes, jaw tight with stress, hands clenched into fists. "We need to talk," he said without preamble, "about what happens next." Elena's stomach dropped. "You're sending me away." "No, I tried that. It didn't work." He stood, moved around the desk. "But I need you to understand what staying means. The Morettis aren't going to stop. They're escalating. Last night was just the first attempt. There will be others." "I know. Do you? Do you really understand what you're signing up for?" He moved closer, and Elena saw the fear beneath his controlled exterior. "They will try to hurt you to get to me. They will use you against Sophia. They will do things." He stopped, swallowed hard. "I've seen what they do to people, Elena. I don't want you to become another casualty in this war." "Then end the war," Elena said. "You keep trying to protect us by hiding, by defending, but maybe it's time to go on offense." Dominic's expression hardened. "You're asking me to become the monster everyone thinks I am. I'm asking you to protect your family. There's a difference." Elena took his hands, felt them trembling slightly. "I'm not naive, Dominic. I know what you are, what you've done, but I also know why you do it. And right now, Sophia needs her father to be strong enough to eliminate this threat. Not just contain it. Eliminate it. If I do that, if I go after the Morettis the way I'm capable of, there's no coming back from it. I'll be exactly what my father was, exactly what I've been trying not to become. Your father didn't fight to protect his daughter. He fought for power and greed. That's the difference." Elena squeezed his hands. Do what you have to do, Dominic. I'm not going anywhere. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I love you, he said. I know it's too soon. I know it's not the right time, but I need you to know. I love you, Elena, and I'm terrified of losing you. You won't lose me. Elena held him tight, this dangerous man who'd somehow become essential to her. I'm not that easy to get rid of. Promise me something. He pulled back, looking into her eyes. If something happens to me, if the Morettis succeed, promise me you'll take Sophia and run. Get her somewhere safe. Give her the life I couldn't. Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me, Elena. She wanted to refuse, wanted to tell him it was unnecessary, but she saw the desperation in his eyes. I promise, but it won't come to that. I hope you're right. That night, Dominic left the estate with his most trusted men. He didn't tell Elena where he was going or what he planned to do. He just kissed her goodbye, a kiss that tasted like desperation and fear and love, and walked out the door. Elena stayed up all night, watching the security monitors, jumping at every sound. Sophia slept fitfully in Elena's bed, too afraid to be alone. Elena held her and prayed to a God she wasn't sure she believed in that Dominic would come home safe. Dawn broke. Still no word. Elena made breakfast, trying to act normal for Sophia's sake. They did a lesson, though neither of them could focus. Sophia kept asking where her daddy was, and Elena kept saying he'd be home soon, hoping it was true. Noon came, then afternoon, then evening. Still nothing. Elena was about to call Marco, the only number she had besides Dominic's, when she heard vehicles approaching. She ran to the window, Sophia at her heels, and saw the familiar black SUVs pulling up the drive. Dominic climbed out of the lead vehicle. He was covered in blood. Not his own, Elena realized with a mixture of relief and horror, and looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. But he was alive. He was home. Sophia ran to him, and he caught her up. Holding her so tight, Elena heard him whisper, "It's over, Principessa. It's finally over." Later, after Sophia was in bed, after Dominic had showered and changed, he told Elena what had happened. He'd gone to the Moretti's headquarters. He'd confronted Victor Moretti himself. And he'd ended the threat, permanently, brutally, in a way that left no doubt about what happened to people who targeted the Castellanos. There were casualties, he said quietly, on both sides. Good men died tonight because of this war, because of me. Because of the Morettis, Elena corrected. They started this. You finished it. Does that make it better? He looked at her, and she saw the weight of what he'd done in his eyes. Does that make me less of a monster? Elena took his face in her hands. You're not a monster. You're a man who did what he had to do to protect his family. That's all. That's everything. I killed 8 people tonight, Elena. 8 human beings who won't go home to their families. How do you look at me and not see a killer? Because I see a father. A man who loves his daughter enough to do terrible things to keep her safe. A man who's trying to be better than he was. She kissed him softly. I see you, Dominic. All of you, and I'm still here. He pulled her close, and Elena felt him shaking, the adrenaline finally wearing off, the reality of what he'd done settling in. She held him while he processed it, while he came to terms with the man he'd had to become tonight. It's really over, she asked eventually. It's over. Victor Moretti is dead. His sons are dead. His organization is scattered. There's no one left to come after us. He pulled back, looking into her eyes. We're safe, Elena. You and Sophia are finally safe. Elena should have felt relief, should have felt joy. Instead, all she felt was exhaustion and a strange sense of loss. Because they were safe now, which meant she didn't have an excuse to stay. The danger that had justified her presence here was gone. As if reading her mind, Dominic said, Don't even think about leaving. I wasn't. You were. I can see it in your eyes. You're thinking that now that the threat is gone, you should go back to your old life. Return to normal. He cupped her face in his hands. But this is your life now, Elena. You're part of this family, and I'm not letting you go. Dominic, marry me. Elena's brain stuttered. What? Marry me. I know it's too soon. I know it's crazy. But I've spent the last 24 hours facing my own mortality, and the only thing I could think about was coming home to you. You and Sophia. My family. He pulled a small box from his pocket. When had he had time to get a ring? And opened it to reveal a simple diamond that somehow managed to be perfect. Marry me, Elena. Make this permanent. Make us permanent. Elena stared at the ring, her mind racing. This was insane. They'd known each other less than 2 months. She just watched him walk out the door to commit murder. She should say no, should ask for time, should be reasonable. But when had anything about this situation been reasonable? Yes, she heard herself say. Yes, I'll marry you. Dominic's face transformed, the darkness lifting, replaced by something that looked almost like hope. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, of course it did, and kissed her with a desperation that stole her breath. I love you, he said against her lips. I will spend the rest of my life being worthy of you. You already are, Elena said, and meant it. They told Sophia the next morning over breakfast. Elena was nervous. This was a huge change, and Sophia had already been through so much upheaval. But when Dominic announced that Elena would be staying forever, that she'd be Sophia's stepmother, Sophia's face lit up with pure joy. Really? Miss Elena's going to be my mommy? If that's okay with you, Elena said carefully. Sophia launched herself at Elena, nearly knocking over her juice. It's more than okay. It's perfect. I get to keep you forever. Elena held her, this child who'd become so precious to her, and felt tears streaming down her face. She'd come to this family as a teacher. She was staying as something so much more. The next few weeks passed in a blur of wedding planning and adjustment. Dominic insisted on a small ceremony, just family and his most trusted associates. Elena agreed, not wanting the spectacle of a large wedding. Besides, the important part wasn't the ceremony. It was the commitment, the promise, the family they were building together. Sophia threw herself into wedding preparations with enthusiasm that was both adorable and exhausting. She wanted to help with everything, picking flowers, choosing music, writing vows. Elena let her be involved in every decision, wanting her to feel like this was her family too, not just something happening to her. The FBI came calling 1 week before the wedding. Detective Morrison sat in Dominic's office, looking uncomfortable and determined in equal measure. Elena sat beside Dominic, holding his hand, presenting a united front. Miss Vasquez, Morrison said, his tone almost apologetic. We're investigating the incident with the Moretti family. Multiple homicides, all connected to Mr. Castellano's organization. We'd like your cooperation. I don't know anything about Mr. Castellano's business affairs, Elena said calmly. I'm Sophia's tutor. That's all. You're also his fiancée. You live in his home. You must have seen something, heard something. I teach a little girl to read, Elena interrupted. I help her with her homework. I read her bedtime stories. That's the extent of my involvement with this family. Morrison's expression hardened. Miss Vasquez, you're making yourself complicit in... I'm making myself a mother to a child who needs one. If that's a crime, arrest me. Elena met his gaze steadily. But I have nothing to tell you about business matters I'm not involved in. Morrison looked at Dominic. You've got her well trained. I've got her loved and protected, Dominic corrected coldly. And if you continue to harass my family, I'll have my lawyers file a restraining order. Are we clear? Morrison stood, clearly frustrated. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Dominic said. The Morettis are dead. Their organization is scattered. The threat is eliminated. Whatever investigation you're conducting is pointless. There's no case to build, no witnesses to flip. It's over, detective. Accept it and move on. After Morrison left, Elena let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. That was terrifying. You did perfectly. Dominic kissed her temple. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. I chose this, Elena reminded him. All of it, the good and the bad. Still, you deserve better than FBI interrogations. I deserve you, and Sophia. That's all I need. The news broke 2 days later. Librarian to marry Mafia boss, screamed the headlines. Elena's photo, pulled from her library ID badge, was plastered across tabloids and news sites. Reporters camped outside the estate gates. Her former colleagues were interviewed, expressing shock and concern. Parents from her literacy programs called her a traitor, said she'd sold out, said she'd chosen blood money over her principles. Elena tried not to read the articles, but it was impossible to avoid them completely. The judgment stung, even though she'd expected it. She'd known that choosing this life meant leaving her old one behind, but seeing it in black and white, seeing people she'd respected condemn her choices, hurt more than she'd anticipated. Ignore them, Dominic said, finding her staring at her laptop one evening. They don't know you. They don't know us. They know enough. Elena closed the laptop. They know I'm marrying a man who's killed people. They know I'm choosing wealth and security over my principles. They're not wrong. They are wrong. You're not choosing wealth. You're choosing family. You're choosing Sophia. You're choosing love. He pulled her close. And your principles, teaching, compassion, helping others, you haven't abandoned those. You're just applying them differently now. Am I? Or am I just justifying my choices? Elena looked up at him. I used to judge people like you. I used to think there was no excuse for violence, no justification for the things you've done, and now I'm marrying you. What does that make me? Human, Dominic said simply. It makes you human. Complex and flawed and capable of holding two truths at once, that I've done terrible things, and that I'm also a man worth loving. That's not hypocrisy, Elena. That's growth. Elena wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that she hadn't just sold her soul for security and love. But the doubts lingered, whispering in the quiet moments when she was alone with her thoughts. The next day she went back to her old apartment, or what used to be her apartment. Dominic had paid off her lease, but the landlord had agreed to let her visit one last time. She walked through the empty rooms, remembering the woman she'd been just 2 months ago. Struggling, lonely, barely surviving. That woman felt like a stranger now. She'd gained so much: love, security, family. But what had she lost? Her independence? Her integrity? Her sense of self? Miss Elena? Sophia's voice came from the doorway. She'd insisted on coming, wanted to see where Elena used to live. Now she looked around the small space with wide eyes. You lived here? I did. It's so small and dark, and... Sophia trailed off, clearly trying to be polite. And not as nice as your house, Elena finished with a small smile. I know. Were you happy here? Elena thought about that. Had she been happy? Or had she just been surviving, telling herself that struggle built character, that she was doing meaningful work even if she was drowning in debt and loneliness? I was content, she said finally. I had a purpose. I was helping people. But no, I wasn't happy. Not like I am now. Because of me and Daddy? Because of you and Daddy, Elena confirmed. She knelt down so they were eye level. Sophia, do you understand that people are saying mean things about me? About us? Sophia nodded seriously. Daddy told me. He said people don't understand why you chose us. But I understand. You chose us because you love us. Right? Right. Then who cares what other people think? Sophia said it with the simple logic of childhood. If we love each other, that's all that matters. Elena pulled her into a hug. You're very wise, you know that? I learned it from you. You taught me that my brain works different, but that doesn't make it wrong. Maybe your choices are different, but that doesn't make them wrong either. Out of the mouths of babes, Elena thought. Sophia was right. She'd spent her whole life teaching children that different didn't mean wrong, that there were multiple paths to success, that conventional wisdom wasn't always right. Maybe it was time to apply that lesson to herself. She took one last look around the apartment, then took Sophia's hand. Let's go home. To the big house? To our house, Elena corrected. Our home. And for the first time since the news broke, Elena felt at peace with her choice. The wedding took place on a Saturday afternoon in the estate's garden. The guest list was small: Dominic's most trusted associates, a few family members, and Sophia, who served as both flower girl and ring bearer because she insisted on being involved in every part of the ceremony. Elena wore a simple white dress, nothing elaborate or expensive, just something that made her feel like herself. Dominic wore a dark suit that made him look even more handsome than usual. But the best part was Sophia, in her pink dress, carrying a basket of roses and grinning so wide her face might split. There was no priest. Dominic's relationship with the church was complicated at best. Instead, a judge who owed Dominic a favor performed the ceremony. The vows were traditional, but when it came time for Dominic to speak, he went off script. Elena, he said, holding both her hands, his voice rough with emotion. You came into my life when I'd given up hope. You gave my daughter the gift of literacy, of confidence, of belief in herself. But more than that, you gave me a reason to be better. You looked at me, at all of me, the good and the terrible, and you chose to stay. I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I promise to spend every day of the rest of my life being worthy of that choice. I love you. I will protect you. I will cherish you. And I will never, ever take for granted the miracle of having you in my life. Elena's vision blurred with tears. When it was her turn, she said, Dominic, when I met you, I thought I knew what love was supposed to look like. Safe, simple, conventional. You've taught me that love is so much more complex and beautiful and terrifying than I ever imagined. You've given me a family, a home, a purpose beyond anything I dreamed of. But most importantly, you've given me yourself, flawed and fierce and fighting every day to be better. I love you for who you are, not despite it. I love you for the father you are to Sophia, for the man you're becoming, for the future we're building together. I choose you, Dominic Castellano, today and every day. When the judge pronounced them married, Dominic kissed her with a tenderness that made her forget they had an audience. Sophia cheered, and everyone applauded, and for one perfect moment, everything was exactly as it should be. The reception was held in the mansion's ballroom. There was food and music and dancing. Sophia dragged Elena onto the dance floor, and they spun around together, laughing. Dominic cut in eventually, pulling Elena close for a slow dance while Sophia danced with Marco, standing on his feet. Happy? Dominic murmured in her ear. Deliriously, Elena said. And she meant it. Despite everything, the violence, the judgment, the complications, she was happy. She'd found her family, her home, her place in the world. That night, after the guests had left and Sophia had finally been convinced to go to bed, Elena and Dominic stood in the library where they'd had their first real conversation. The room where everything had changed. I have something for you, Dominic said. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a check, $10 million made out to the Riverside Library System. Elena stared at it, her hands shaking. Dominic, this is your wedding present. I'm donating it in your name for literacy programs, dyslexia screening, teacher training, whatever you think will help the most. You gave up your work at the library to be with us. This way, you can still make a difference, just on a larger scale. I don't know what to say. Say you'll help me distribute it. Say you'll design the programs. Say you'll use your expertise to help other children like Sophia. He pulled her close. You're not just my wife, Elena. You're my partner, in everything. Your passion for literacy, your compassion for struggling children. That's part of who you are. I don't want you to lose that just because you married me. Elena kissed him, pouring all her gratitude and love into it. Thank you for understanding, for supporting this, for everything. Thank you for choosing us, he said simply. They made love that night in Elena's suite, their suite now, and it was tender and passionate and perfect. Afterward, lying in Dominic's arms, Elena thought about the journey that had brought her here. From the struggling librarian who'd found a crying child in the library to the wife of a man who'd once terrified her. It had been 2 months, but it felt like a lifetime. She'd changed, grown, evolved into someone she barely recognized. But she liked who she'd become. She liked this woman who could hold both compassion and pragmatism, who could love a dangerous man while maintaining her own sense of morality, who could build a family in the most unlikely of circumstances. "What are you thinking?" Dominic asked, running his fingers through her hair. "That I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," Elena said. "Finally." The months that followed were a period of adjustment and growth. Elena threw herself into designing the literacy programs funded by Dominic's donation. She worked with the library system to implement dyslexia screening in all Riverside schools. She trained teachers on multisensory instruction techniques. She created a scholarship fund for children with learning differences. And through it all, she continued teaching Sophia. The girl was reading at grade level now, devouring books with the enthusiasm of someone making up for lost time. She wrote stories, joined the school's book club, even started tutoring younger children who struggled with reading. Sophia had transformed from a child who thought she was broken into a confident, capable young girl who knew her worth. Dominic kept his promise about transitioning out of illegal activities. It was slow. You couldn't just walk away from that world overnight, but he was making progress. Legitimate business ventures, legal partnerships, slowly building something he could be proud of. Something Sophia could inherit without shame. 6 months after the wedding, Elena discovered she was pregnant. She told Dominic over dinner, watching his face transform from shock to joy to something that looked like fear. "Are you happy?" she asked, suddenly uncertain. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it." He pulled her into his arms. "But I'm also terrified. What if I fail this child the way I almost failed Sophia? What if—" "You won't," Elena said firmly. "You're not the same man you were when Sophia was born. You've grown. You've changed. And this time, you won't be doing it alone. We're partners, remember?" "Partners," he agreed and kissed her. They told Sophia that night. She was ecstatic, immediately planning everything from nursery colors to baby names. She insisted on reading to Elena's belly every night, convinced the baby could hear her. Elena let her, touched by her enthusiasm and love. The pregnancy was easy, which felt like a gift after everything they'd been through. Elena worked on her literacy programs, taught Sophia, prepared for the baby. Dominic was attentive to the point of being overprotective, but Elena found it endearing rather than annoying. He'd already lost one wife. She understood his fear. The twins, because of course it was twins, were born on a snowy December morning. A boy and a girl, healthy and perfect. They named them Marco Antonio, after Dominic's loyal consigliere who'd become a friend, and Maria Elena, after Dominic's first wife and Elena herself, a bridge between past and future. Sophia was smitten with her new siblings, insisting on helping with everything. She read to them constantly, even though they were too young to understand. "They need to hear words," she explained seriously, "so their brains learn early." Elena watched her family grow and felt a contentment she'd never imagined possible. This wasn't the life she'd planned. It wasn't conventional or simple or safe, but it was hers, built on love and choice and the belief that people could change, could grow, could become better than they were. 2 years after the wedding, the Castellano Foundation opened its first community literacy center in downtown Riverside. It offered free tutoring, dyslexia screening, adult literacy classes, and teacher training. Elena cut the ribbon at the opening ceremony, Dominic beside her, Sophia, now 11 and reading at high school level, holding Marco and Maria. The crowd was mixed. Some who'd condemned Elena's choices, some who'd supported her, many who were simply grateful for the resources the center provided. Elena didn't care about the judgment anymore. She'd learned that you couldn't please everyone, that doing good work mattered more than public opinion. "Thank you all for coming," she said into the microphone, her voice steady. "This center exists because one little girl taught me that different doesn't mean broken, that struggle doesn't mean failure, and that the right support can unlock potential no one knew existed. It exists because a man who'd lost hope found it again through his daughter's success. It exists because a family, unconventional and complicated and real, chose to use their resources to help others." She looked at Dominic, at Sophia, at the twins. Family isn't always what we expect. It's not always conventional or easy, but it's always worth fighting for. And education, literacy, that's how we fight. That's how we break cycles and build futures and give children the tools they need to succeed. So thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting this work. And thank you for believing that change is possible, for individuals and for communities. The applause was thunderous. Elena stepped back from the microphone and Dominic pulled her close, kissing her temple. "I'm proud of you," he murmured. "So damn proud." "We did this together," Elena said. "All of us." That evening, after the ceremony, after the tours and the interviews and the handshaking, Elena found herself back in the mansion library. The room where everything had started, where Dominic had first made his offer, where they'd had their first real conversation, where so much had changed. Sophia found her there, curling up beside her on the couch. She was reading Charlotte's Web again, her comfort book, the one that reminded her of her journey. "Miss Elena?" Sophia said. She still called her that sometimes, even though Elena was officially her stepmother now. "Do you ever regret it? Choosing us?" Elena thought about that question, about the life she'd left behind, the judgment she'd faced, the compromises she'd made, about the woman she'd been and the woman she'd become. "Not for a second," she said honestly. "Do you know why?" "Why?" "Because you taught me something important. You taught me that the right path isn't always the easy one. That love requires courage. That family is worth fighting for, even when it's complicated. You taught me to be brave, Sophia, and I'll never regret that lesson." Sophia smiled and went back to her book. Elena watched her read. This child who'd once thought she was broken, now confident and capable and kind, this was why she'd made the choices she'd made. Not for the money or the security or even for Dominic. For Sophia. For the chance to give one child what her brother had never received. And in doing so, she'd found herself, found her family, found her home. Dominic appeared in the doorway, the twins in his arms. "Story time?" he asked. "Story time," Elena agreed. They settled together on the couch, Dominic, Elena, Sophia, and the twins. Sophia read aloud from Charlotte's Web, doing all the voices the way Elena had taught her. The twins babbled along, not understanding but enjoying the sound of their sister's voice. Dominic held Elena's hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. This was her life now, messy and complicated and absolutely perfect. Elena thought about that day in the library when she'd found a crying child and made a choice that changed everything. She thought about all the moments since then, the fear and the love and the growth and the challenges. She thought about the woman she'd been, so certain of what was right and wrong, so sure of the path her life should take. That woman had been naive. But she'd also been brave. Brave enough to help a stranger's child. Brave enough to stay when things got dangerous. Brave enough to love a man everyone told her was a monster. Brave enough to build a family in the most unlikely of places. "What are you thinking about?" Dominic asked softly. "That I'd do it all again," Elena said. "Every choice, every compromise, every scary moment. I'd do it all again to get here, to this moment, to this family. Even the parts where you thought I might kill you?" He was teasing, but there was real curiosity in his eyes. "Even those parts," Elena confirmed, "because they led to this, to us, to Sophia reading to her siblings, to a literacy center that will help thousands of children, to a life that matters." "You always mattered," Dominic said. "Even before you met us. You were already making a difference." "Maybe, but I was doing it alone. Now I have partners, I have family, I have you." She kissed him softly. "And that makes all the difference." Sophia finished her chapter and looked up. "Another one?" "Another one," Elena agreed. And as Sophia's voice filled the library reading about friendship and loyalty and the power of words, Elena closed her eyes and felt the weight of her choices settle into something that felt like peace. She'd chosen love over safety, family over convention, complexity over simplicity, and she'd do it again in a heartbeat, because this messy, complicated, beautiful family was worth everything. The judgment, the fear, the compromises, all of it. This was what mattered. Not the path she'd thought her life should take, but the path she'd actually walked. The one that led her here, to this moment, to this love, to this home. Elena Vasquez had started as a struggling librarian who'd found a crying child in a library. She'd become a teacher, a wife, a mother, a philanthropist. She'd become part of a family that defied every expectation. She'd become someone who understood that morality wasn't black and white, that love required courage, that family was worth fighting for even when the world said you were wrong. She'd become herself, fully, completely, unapologetically, and she'd never been happier. Did this story touch your heart? If you found yourself moved by Elena and Dominic's journey, please hit that like button and share this with someone who believes in second chances and unconventional love stories. Drop a comment below telling me which moment made you cry. Was it Sophia's first breakthrough, the proposal, or the family's final scene? I read every single comment and love hearing your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe for more emotional, heartwarming stories that remind us that family isn't always what we expect, but it's always worth fighting for. Thank you so much for being here and sharing this journey with me. Your support means everything.